And we are live.
From the industrial wastelands of Michigan to the fruited plains of Iowa, this is the American
Why
Breed
would they do
Factory.
it cheer perversity?
You are the dead. Remain exactly where you are. Make no move until you are ordered.
We burn them to ashes and then burn the ashes. That's our official motto.
Now we can see you. Clasp your hands behind your heads. Stand out in the middle of the room. Stand back to back.
Who can explain the fascination of fire? What draws us to it, whether we're young or old?
Here comes a candle to light you to bed. Here comes a chopper to chop off your head.
And welcome to the American Breed Factory podcast. This is Nathan.
This is Colin.
Andrew. All right, big week this week. Lots of amazing stuff going on in the world that we can all be depressed about. So, Dune. Have we seen it? The new one.
Dune 2021. Yes, I have seen it.
Yes. And have you guys seen the original David Lynch Dune from 1984?
I have seen it, but I've not. I have like my most recent viewing would probably be like 10 years ago.
Okay.
So I mean, something I can maybe compare to this movie is like kind of where I stop watching Dune is pretty much where this movie ends. Like once the Harkonnens like take over it and they go off in the desert, that's kind of why I stop watching David Lynch's Dune. So it makes a perfect first movie.
Yeah.
To me. Andrew, have you read the book?
No, I've only seen this.
Okay. So you haven't seen David Lynch's one. Okay. Or you haven't watched the sci-fi miniseries, have you?
Nope, I never had access to it.
Okay. So. Yeah, I've read the book probably 12 years ago, so. But that's my history with Dune. Nathan has long history.
Well, I've read all the books that Frank Herbert wrote.
Okay,
his son and Kevin J. Anderson have done prequels, and I read two of them, and they were fine, but they weren't Frank Herbert's Dune. They were books that if I just picked them up and they were unrelated to something, I'd be like, oh, these are serviceable, but I wouldn't revisit them, and I wouldn't invest in, I think there's 12 of them now or something, because they've done the prequels, and then the post, they finished out Chapter House.
All right, is Children of Dune, is that the one he took over?
No, let me see. I'm trying to remember, because there's Dune Messiah, and then there's Children of Dune, and then Chapter House Dune.
Oh, okay.
Let me look it up to make sure I'm not full of shit.
Well, Andrew, have you seen the documentary Jodorowsky's Dune?
Nope, I haven't seen anything about Dune besides this.
Okay. Have you ever played the video game Dune?
There's a video game? No.
Yes. So, yeah, it was actually on the Genesis, and it's they were made by Westwood, and it was the precursor to the Command and Conquer series. So if you just swap spice for Tiberium, that's the origin of the Command and Conquer series is Dune.
Yep. Yep, those are very interesting games for their time. I remember them.
Yeah, they're hard. They're hard to play a real-time strategy game on a Sega Genesis controller. I mean, it worked, but they weren't as good as Command and Conquer on a PC. So.
Well, I think it's hard to have a PC control for an RTS on a controller. Like, Halo Wars is probably the only RTS I played on a console, and it was only good just because it was limited unit size and it was, limited tactics as far as that's concerned.
I remember playing Command and Conquer Red Alert on a PlayStation for no reason. Like, I had it for PC, and I decided, let's check it out on PlayStation, because for some reason back then I would probably think that the PlayStation had better graphics than my PC. Maybe I did. I'm not sure. I can't remember what PC I had at the time.
So let's see. Yeah, back to there was the Frank Herbert in 1965. He wrote Dune.
Okay.
And then Dune Messiah came out, Children of Dune, God Emperor of Dune, Heretics of Dune, and then the last one, Chapter House Dune, which was published a year before his death. So he did not finish the Dune cycle, but he's also written a lot of other books too, and a lot of short stories.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys that got his start in sci-fi writing and like by writing for magazines.
Yeah.
Because like the Dune ideas were all fleshed out in like Fantastic Tales and those other publishing magazines. He wrote a book about a plague that made all the women on the planet sterile. And that was a weird one. It was published in 1982. It was kind of unknown, but it was a very dark book, and it was cool, a lot of full ideas, and I've read a lot of his stuff, but the Dune stuff is what I remember the most. And like I said, it's mind-bendingly weird. I mean, it's as weird as anything you can read.
Yeah, Dune is supposed to be weird, so and this movie is also weird, so it's like it follows Dune.
Yeah. Well, I will say, like, it's not really fair to like Denis Villeneuve, because like Frank Herbert was alive when the Dune film came out, which was a movie fraught with production troubles, and basically David Lynch was deceived because he thought he was making a 2-part movie also.
Yeah.
And that like got shrunk down. It's like, no, you've got to cram all this into one movie. And then they were filming in Mexico, which was a nightmare because everyone got sick and they had all kinds of problems, and the power would shut off randomly in the middle of production, and it was incredibly hot, and the sets were even worse because they were shooting outside of Mexico City in the desert where it was hotter than hell, and then you got to light the hell out of those sets.
Yeah, but those sets look great, and those costumes look great.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about Dune. Is like, because Frank Herbert actually said, this is kind of my vision of Dune, not the storytelling part of the movie, the visual aspects of the movie.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I kind of imagine this is Dune. That's like, was really brought to life well. And
Yeah,
it had
so
a weird soundtrack.
yes, I don't. So if you know anything about Dune, but do you know David Lynch, Andrew?
Yeah, I know who David Lynch is.
Okay, so he directed the original Dune movie, but he took his name off of it for various reasons, but he didn't get final cut or something like that.
You know, because it went down for like, what, 5 or 6 hours at 2. So
Yeah.
Yeah. There's like a 3-hour cut out of there, but he still doesn't approve of it.
Well, yeah, because it's half his movie. It's not exactly what I would call a good representation of what he put to film.
But anyways, this is one of the notorious Alan Smithy movies, so he took his name off of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it took, they added after they filmed the movie, which was almost had 9 months of the production delay, because they have to keep rewriting the story to fit it within this movie. And it was $45 million, which in 1984 bucks wasn't cheap, but for a movie of this scope, it wasn't a lot of money either. But they did some good job with the costuming and the sets and everything. I don't think the actors got a lot of direction because it was such a nightmarish. Because like everyone showed up and kind of did their thing, and it was Kyle MacLachlan's first movie with David Lynch, which led to a lifelong partnership. But it was
was Blue Velvet after this?
I think so. Yeah, I think Blue Velvet was like 85.
Oh, okay.
We got to remember this came out in 84, but I think it started production in 82.
Okay.
So it's because it took almost a year to edit it. And the people that edited it were not the director or the writer. It was just people they hired. It's like, make this make sense. And they're like, huh? Okay. Do what we can. It had a lot of great actors in it. Patrick Stewart, Brad Dourif, Dean Stockwell, Virginia Madsen, Sting, Max von Sydow. And this is a movie they've been trying to make for 12, 13 years. Because this was originally supposed to be made by Ridley Scott, but another one of his older brothers died, and he said, "Yeah, I'm not in that frame of mind right now, and I'm definitely not taking on Dune." And then before that, we had Alejandro Jodorowsky, who was going to just make a wild, drug-soaked interpretation of Dune, which probably would have worked, and probably still needs to be made.
Yeah, the documentary about it is fascinating because, like, I mean, they just blow smoke up at everybody's ass, but like you get caught up in it. It's like, yeah, this would have been an amazing movie, but then you have to tell yourself the truth. Like, no, it wouldn't have been.
It would have been a more incoherent mess than the 1984 Dune, but it would have been really cool to watch.
Yeah.
I would like to see that Chris Foss art come alive, and the guy Giger, who is later known for Alien, like was working on set design concepts and stuff. And it's like, oh, this would have looked amazing. He's had some of the best visuals ever, or really horrible ones that, like, I could imagine how this would be cool.
Yeah, and the cast was just full of rock stars and people you know, and it's like
Pink Floyd was like, we're going to contract Pink Floyd to make the soundtrack, which would have been amazing. But which was kind of a nod to that in one of the early trailers of the Villeneuve Dune, because one of the trailers they had a chorus singing Dark Side of the Moon or something. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it was kind of he said he liked David Lynch's Dune. All the people that worked on the Dune 2021 production said that movie is owed a lot, because they
it seemed
stuff that, like, oh, no one would ever try this now.
I feel like this Dune, the 2021 one, like, kind of pays homage to almost everything that every Dune that has preceded it. Like, even the video games, there's stuff in there from those. Like, and I actually thought one thing I thought they did really well is I always thought the idea of the ornithopter was stupid.
Yeah.
Like a flying dragonfly, but it's mechanical. And like, I remember the Jordowski stuff, like they have the concept art for it, and it's just like, looks like they hollowed out a giant dragonfly, and now it's a vehicle. And it's like, I kind of always think that biomechanical stuff looks stupid. Here they make it like really cool looking, and kind of like, but it looks like a flying dragonfly, but it's just more mechanical.
Yeah, it's squared off hull and everything. And
and like and the way the wings flap, it's like they get it just right, where it's just kind of like this haze of the flapping, or it's more like a helicopter, and it's like different from the haze they use with the shield stuff. And like, I thought that stuff like really worked really well, because it's always something I thought is just stupid. So they made it work.
Yeah, this is 10,000 years in the future. And remember, there's no computers or anything. There's no calculators in this universe, because it was a universe controlled by humans who mastered machines and thinking machines. Never said AI. And it also, in the Dune canon, the actual Dune as written by, because there's some people that, like, there was a kind of a new canon created by Frank Herbert's son and Anderson, which more in line with like Terminator type stuff. But as Frank Herbert envisioned it, it wasn't machines that achieved artificial intelligence. It was evil men that could figured out how to hack machines, essentially, before there was a word for that. And they took over. And that's why they had the Butlerian Jihad, which destroyed all thinking machines, because it wasn't the machines themselves that were bad. It was the men that controlled them. And society became very decadent. So like, all the weirdness in this is because they don't use computers for any of this crap. And so they traded computers for enslavement to a drug that only comes from one planet. And they even talk about that in the later Dune books. It's like, we just traded thinking machines for enslavement to drugs, because our minds aren't this good unless you chemically enhance them. And it's like we're just a different kind of thing.
Well, and they get the whole stuff with the weird stuff with the Bene Gesserit, where it all makes it more Lord of the Rings than it does like a sci-fi thing.
Yeah,
They're witches. But I don't know, they make it work. So, what's inside the box? Pain. I do think Timothy Clement, Clement, I always say his name. I think he's better.
Chalamet.
Yeah, he's a better actor than what's his name?
Kyle MacLachlan.
Yeah, at least at their ages, at the comparable ages, this guy's a better actor.
Well, Paul Atreides was supposed to be 15 in the books.
Yeah.
And when Dune is introduced, he's 15 years old, somewhere thereabouts. Chalamet looks like he's that age.
Yeah.
And he acts like a young man who still has heroes and is still looking for father figures and stuff. Kyle MacLachlan's in his mid-20s. And also, like I said, the thing with the first Dune, or with David Lynch's Dune, I don't think the actors got a lot of direction. And Lynch is kind of known around that. It's like, fuck it, we'll fix it in post. That's sort of his famous line. And so everyone was like, all the British guys, like the guy playing Vladimir Harkonnen and the 84 Dune, he's just completely over the top crazy, because he's a British theater actor, and he's just like, this is your character, what do you want me to do? you're the actor, you figure it out. And he does. He does a crazy.
He plays the cheap seats.
Yeah,
right there.
He's,
Let me yell my lines so everybody can hear.
yeah, I'm gonna shout my lines. And that was like in this movie, it's a lot more. Villeneuve was a lot more into his actors and like, no, do this. If we're gonna do it that way, this is what I want from you. Not we're gonna string a bunch of ideas together. And this movie went into production with the thought that like this ends when he meets the Fremen. Like we're doing half the Dune book.
Okay.
So that's like Villeneuve had that from the beginning. It was preloaded. Like we're not guaranteeing a second film. Let's see how this does. But you only have to fill this much space. And so he filled it a lot better. And he changed almost everyone from the original movie. Like the Harkonnens in this, they're a lot different. And they don't have a lot of screen time either. So
Yeah.
most of this is Paul and his mother. And those are like the main characters in this. I mean, everyone else has a part to play.
Yeah, well, it's like, because this time around, it's like you give more time to those people because you have like a 2.5 hour movie and you're only doing half of the first Dune book. So,
yeah.
I mean, they give a lot of forethought, like they have him doing dreams and of all the Fremen people and stuff like that. But like that really doesn't start till like the end of the movie.
Oscar Isaac is kind of in there for, maybe 5 minutes, and he's Leto Atreides, his father. Josh Brolin has 5 minutes worth of lines. Dave Bautista is basically in the background, except for when he's shouting in the one scene. Now, the guy who played the Sword Master.
What, Duncan Idaho?
Yeah. He
Jason Momoa.
Yeah, he got a lot more time.
I really liked him because that's the thing. Like, I really like that character from the books because he's actually like very separate from all the other characters because everybody's always up in all this weird stuff, and so they're just weird characters. And he's just somebody that's like seems like he's from America. It's like, hey, how's it going?
Yeah,
and that's how he's written in the book. Like, he's just a cool dude who's good at stuff, and so he's very likable in this movie because he's the least weird person in the movie.
Well, he is a Ganaz level 9 sword master. There is no 10th level. That's as high as you can go. So he was brought in specifically to teach sword and fighting to Paul as a sword master, which kind of overlaps with Gurney Halleck's role. But Gurney Halleck is more of a strategic guy, too. He can teach hundreds of men how to fight with knives and swords effectively, whereas Duncan Idaho doesn't really... Like, he kind of works with Paul, and he's also a very skilled pilot too. Which,
and also, I just love that he has like the stupidest name.
Yeah, Duncan Idaho. That's the most American sounding name you will ever find. Other people have names like
Duncan Dodge, Idaho.
Other people have weird foreign sounding names or Russian sounding names, and then there's Duncan Idaho. How y'all doing?
Where are you from? Kansas.
Yep.
That's why they call me Duncan Idaho.
Well, again, this was one of those things. He picked the names out of phone books.
Okay.
For actual, because he had so many characters to write. Because that's the thing about the Dune universe. There is literally a cast of hundreds in one book, and they all do something. So it's that was one of the problems with the original Dune. 52 speaking parts. And all pretty much main characters that interact with the plot in one way or another. I mean, that's why this is so pared down. Like, you have these guys. Like, everyone has something. Like
essentially, you could make a season of Game of Thrones out of Dune, but it's like, here's a 2.5 hour movie. But but here they split it in half. They split the book in half, the first book. So.
And then they have, the guy who plays Thufir Hawat, like, he, he's almost an accessory character that has like a couple lines, but they say in the next movie a lot of that's going to be, you're going to get a lot more of the side characters because a lot of the main characters are dead now.
Well, I mean, Josh Brolin's character didn't technically die. He's the one that leaked information that they were talking about shooting the second movie soon. So I mean,
Now Gurney Halleck doesn't die. Well, in the Dune series, he doesn't die.
Well, he's thought to be dead, but then they find each other later on.
Yeah.
I can't. Does somebody get like resurrected or something? Like, does Duncan Idaho come back, or is that something that happens to Paul?
No, Duncan Idaho keeps when Paul Atreides becomes the God Emperor. There's another group. It's like an imperial house. It's like they're called the Tlaxu or Tlilaxu, depending on how you pronounce it. And they're masters of cloning and genetic manipulation. And they keep sending clones of Duncan Idaho that Paul keeps killing because he's like, no, you don't have him right. You don't have him right. Because they're trying to manipulate him. Paul knows they're trying to manipulate him. But literally like 50 Duncan clones get sent to the God Emperor and he kills them all. Until the last one, he's like, well, you've been through enough. So, but those are called Golas. They're not like resurrected with their consciousness or anything. They're just like a physical copy of them. Okay. And then the Tlaxu try to teach them up and like, yeah, get close to Paul and then unleash your secret plans. And Paul, because he's not stupid, because the Tlaxu are evil, but they're also necessary because they're trying to clone sandworms and start the spice cycle somewhere else. Because the big problem with the economy of the Dune universe is you need this one spice and it comes from one planet. And
then how does like hyperspace travel work? Is that big like worm spaceship thing? Is that what sends them into hyperspace, or does all the ships get into that thing and that thing goes into hyperspace?
Yeah, those are basically like super carriers that.
Okay. So they're not like gates that throw them through space or whatever.
No. Everything in this universe is based on what you call Holtzman technology, because that's what the body shields are. That's a Holtzman shield, and you can use that same technology to create like a warp space. So that's what's going on there.
Andrew, it sounds like you're just dumping Legos all over the place.
It's all right. I'm trying to eat Cheetos very quietly.
Well, I've provided an interesting backdrop effect to describing folding space with but it's a gravity drive.
Okay.
So that's how long that concept's been around. It's just very, very high powered, Holtzman field.
Because like you never see those things move, you just see ships coming out of them at different planets. So I was left to assume, like I didn't know if that
move instantaneously.
Oh, okay.
That's what it means when you warp space. You just fold space.
Okay, yeah.
And then kind of like the what's that? That's that
Event Horizon.
Yeah, the Event Horizon theory of space is, and that's all controlled by the Spacing Guild. Everything in this movie, there was always a check and balance put on different power.
Yeah.
It's like who mines the spice is controlled by the Emperor, who controls CHOAM, which gives the contracts to mine spice, and also the Spacing Guild owns part of CHOAM, the Emperor does. All the profits from spice production go to whatever house is mining it, and the houses all fight over that, but they've had the Harkonnens in there for a long time because the Emperor doesn't trust the Atreides because they're the only people apparently in the universe that aren't twisted and evil and insane. So it's like we got to watch these guys. Now, one big difference that they did in this movie from the other, just comparing movies, is they do because in 1984's Dune they had something called a weirding module, which was just something David Lynch created because the weirding way is just sand kung fu. That's what the weirding way really is. But think of it more like gun kata. It's kind of a predictive fighting style. It's like, we've analyzed millions of hours of human fights, and it's a Bene Gesserit technique. Because remember, the Bene Gesserit, the witches, they can control their physiology, their bodies, everything completely. So they figured out this fighting technique called the weirding way, which is basically like a predictive fighting method. And Paul Atreides learns it from his mother. And then he expands it, and that's how they defeat in the second movie, how they'll defeat the Emperor and the Sardaukar and all that is because they have this essentially, think of it like gun kata but with swords. But the Dune movie just made it into a module because David Lynch was like, that's just kung fu in the sand, and I'm not filming that. So it's going to be a sound weapon that projects hate into a weapon because that sounds like something that would be in Dune. It's totally made up.
Although I always remember that bit. It's just something about like they start saying his name. I forget what his name becomes, but then that becomes and it becomes the thing that makes the sound weapon shoot or whatever.
Well, no, one of the guys calls out to him because they have a throat mic and then it's like a thing that you hold up, and it's just a weird looking, looks like a crystal in the end of it. It's just a prop. But he says, "Hey, Muad'Dib, come here," and all of a sudden his weapon starts vibrating. He has to aim it away, and it like destroys a wall. And he's like, my name is a killing word. You know, that's strictly David Lynch and the writers of the '84 Dune. That's not a real thing in the Dune universe. But it was kind of, I could see why he did it, because it's like, well, I'm not going to get all my main actors into kung fu classes. They're going to be, because the 1984 Dune was a lot more like guns. There was some knife play, but essentially people were using like slow guns and stuff in that, which were really also were not in the Dune novels. This movie's a lot more pure to what, like, how Frank Herbert wrote, like, what fighting styles were. And because here, instead of, like, the voiceovers and stuff, they had, like, their secret languages, which were all over Dune, like the hand signals and stuff they'd make. And, like, that was all covered in the book. Because all the people from, everyone spoke, like, English as a common language. But then there was, like, you know, there was an Atreides language, there was an Atreides battle language, there was an Atreides spy language, there was Atreides hand signals, and there was for the Harkonnens, everyone had like their own language that they didn't teach outsiders, so they could have conversations in front of people and they wouldn't know what was going on, or they could broadcast things. Because another thing in this universe, when you use radios and stuff, you don't have frequency hopping radios that are hooked up to computers. Everything you're transmitting is in the clear, because you can't make technology that does that. So everyone speaks their own secret hidden language and stuff. So that they kind of work that in here, instead of having voiceovers and characters having thoughts and just projecting them to the camera. Like, what are they doing? What does it mean? Like, they did none of that in this movie.
Now, I can't remember, but is there a thing in the book or maybe the movie that when they have their shields on, they can't hear?
There's a lot of weird things about those fighting shields, because it's just called a Holtzman defensive field. And it depends on how much you dial it up, because the reason like those slow bullets and the knives go through slowly is you have it dialed up enough to stop things coming at you fast, but you can't dial it up too high because you can actually prevent air from coming in there and it'll just kill you. You'll just suffocate. So, you can't hear as well.
Okay.
Because the sound is coming slower. But that's why when those guys fight with those shields, like, they're always like, they do some things in this movie that look cool. Like, they're always looking around because they don't know if someone's coming from behind them. It's not really explained, but yeah, that's how those fields work.
Okay.
And the reason they don't shoot at them with lasers is because if a las gun hits a Holtzman field, it creates like a miniature nuclear explosion. So you wouldn't want to shoot one of those. And the stronger the field is, and the laser hits it, the more powerful the explosion. So that's why, like, in the movie, careful attention, when Duncan Idaho is piloting the Harkonnen ornithopter, they wait until they knock his shields down before they fire that big, like, based laser at him.
Yeah.
Because they wouldn't want to hit him when he had his shield up, because it would create a it would destroy Arakeen. So that was a little like thing in the movie. That's like, oh, they showed his shields getting knocked down just for 1 second. You wouldn't notice it or care if you hadn't read all these books, but there was a lot of little good things they threw in there.
Andrew, as our resident novice to Dune, were you able to enjoy it?
No, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it deserves every award it could possibly get, because the score is amazing, and they should put more kind of work into that, because the atmosphere they created with every scene and stuff like that with their custom score was really great. Their cinematography was amazing for scale purposes, but also just to show everything in the movie. Like, it was all well shot and all well done. Like, the story moves smoothly. It explained everything, especially without a lot of exposition, which is pretty weird in a sci-fi movie, because usually exposition is the name of the game to explain a universe, but it seemed like it fit really well without much explanation.
Yeah, here they kind of just give you a lot of visual information. You're kind of left to figure it out or just know what's going on. So
yeah,
if totally you don't know, it still works. You don't have to know all this stuff. It's just cool. They do tip their hat to how the universe does function.
Yeah.
Because it's a very dense universe. There's a lot of very complicated things going on here. And it doesn't get more clear as the novels goes on. It just gets worse. It's just like more weird concepts are introduced. It becomes an economy of souls after a while. It's like, wow, this is terrible. Because in the end, guess what? Paul Atreides not the good guy. Not.
Well,
He turned out to be the good guy.
I remember I read the book.
Why is
Like,
Space Jesus a good guy?
well, no, I actually read him as being fuck. Well, I can't remember his name. Osama bin Laden, because it's like a prince who goes out into the desert and comes back to wreak havoc and terrorism on everybody.
If Luke Skywalker's a terrorist, I don't see why Paul Atreides can't be a terrorist. I mean, that's really the bar we're setting here. I mean,
Yeah, I could see George Bush dressed in like the emperor's outfit. And, you know, who's his vice president? Cheney is the freaky.
Well, he's got to be the Baron, right? Because he's
No,
like
he's got to
fat.
be the guild navigator. No,
Oh, okay.
No, the Baron would be like I don't know. I don't know if he had anyone really crazy, like openly crazy around him. Yeah, he could be the Baron too. That would be more like the secretary.
It's Rush Limbaugh as the Baron.
Yeah.
I'm just a mouthpiece.
Yeah, I did like Stellan Skarsgård as Vladimir Harkonnen. A lot more subdued performance, but definitely more menacing.
Yes, yeah.
Like, this guy seems like a guy who could concoct a plan like this. Whereas the other guy because that was always a joke in the first movie. It's like the real brain trust there was the Mentat, Peter de Vries. Because remember, they used to argue about whose plan it was? Because the Duke's like, I want to explain to you my plan. And Peter was like, our plan. And then the Duke was like, the plan. You know, and it was so there was always like that. Whereas in this, it's like, oh no, this guy seems like. And they did the floating thing, but it seemed more scary in this and less cartoonish and fun.
Yeah, well, it's like it's not like in a chair. It's like it's in his spine.
Yeah. And then when he does float, it's like, you know, very.
And you got those really long robes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, they do a lot because it's a PG-13 movie, I believe, and yeah, they do a lot of minutes because there's stuff that like the stuff with the doctor is like so like heartbreaking. Like they said, like they taken her apart like a doll, and like you don't see it. You just all you see is that weird little like monster thing with like 6 human hands. Is like, are they just making stuff out of people? And it's like that's frightening.
Yeah. Oh, their Harkonnens are weird.
Yeah.
That was actually a lady who did a video called Spider Dance. And because she moved around like that, she can actually move like that.
Yeah.
And I guess Villeneuve liked it so much, he's like, I'm going to have to work this lady into my movie. Now, of course, she doesn't have like 6 spider legs. That was special effects. But all the moves were her. They just CG'd in the other moves of her with the spider legs. So some people thought, like, is that Dr. Huey's wife? Is that what they're doing to her? And he's like, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah. Or that's just his wife's arms attached to a different lady.
Yeah.
Also, Villeneuve has a thing with spiders, so there's that.
Yeah. Well, I kind of figured that's what it connected to.
And I know it's a different movie, and I haven't even seen it. I just know the reference. Was that Enemies? It's the one with Jake Gyllenhaal. So
it's a great movie. It's a deeply weird movie.
Yeah.
It's pretty normal. It's kind of like a combination of Eyes Wide Shut, but not as over the top, but that it has that element to it, and then just normal people reacting to what goes on. And then there's giant spiders in the background, like hanging on the sides of skyscrapers that no one seems to. They're just driving along, huh? But that's all just.
Yeah, because like right now, to me, I haven't seen some of his older stuff, but to me, Denis Villeneuve hasn't made a bad movie yet. So
no, he hasn't. Well, and he's also remaking it into the same stuff that I am. It's just like, well, he grew up in Montreal and had like access to arts and studied cinema and stuff. But it's like all the shit I'm into, he's into.
Yeah.
So it's like when this guy does a movie, I'm pretty excited. It's like, yeah, this guy loves the same stuff I did. He did Blade Runner. He did this.
But yeah, like the first thing I saw of his was Sicario. And like ever since he's done sci-fi stuff, which I think is fascinating. Well, actually, I think he did Prisoners. With like Hugh Jackman, which that's another one I haven't seen. I think that's in between or after Sicario, maybe. But
and you should see some of his French stuff. Just the French language stuff. That's all like from heavy metal. Like that's the other thing. Is that kind of animation style and story style. Like that's. But you don't see that here because it's all in French. I mean, you can watch it, but
there's some movie. I'm not sure if it's good, but I saw it on Twitter via Patton Oswalt because he's in it. It's something that looks very heavy metal, and it's animated.
Spine of Night.
Yes.
Yeah, I follow that guy on YouTube. The guy who did that.
Yeah.
'Cause he's really into like, let's make everything rotoscope, and go back to the 80s and 70s and those kind of movies. Because I always said like the Lord of the Rings was a disaster, but it looked really cool. the rotoscope Lord of the Rings that Ralph Bakshi did. And I don't like some Ralph Bakshi stuff I like, but I don't have a lot of tolerance for it. I couldn't do him in Serial, but I'll watch one of his movies, like his animated movies. And yeah, Spine of Night is because I follow that guy on YouTube. He's been talking about it for like a year.
Okay. Yeah, I just saw the trailer for it, and it just looked like just extreme violence and like a bunch of stuff. It looks like it's probably just a bunch of short stories crammed together in a movie, but
yeah, it's
visually so visually it looks interesting. I don't know if it's good, but it looks interesting.
It's if you've seen heavy metal, it's just kind of a medieval version of that. There's the MacGuffin that all the stories circle around and everyone's interaction with this blue flower, and yeah, I mean I haven't seen it yet, but I will. Because I know he's been doing it. It's like he seems to have a good sense of humor about it. Like he's not like, this is my life, but it is.
Let's see what else about Dune. Some weird sand walking, some cool technology, or just updated.
Well, weird sand walking that nobody practiced in the movie until the last 10 minutes. Like the whole time they're just walking like rhythmically through the desert. It's like, well, apparently this doesn't matter. Just fucking walk all the time rhythmically. It doesn't fucking matter at all. And then like my question was kind of answered with rhythmic when the lead fucking scientist or whatever gets eaten and shit like that with the couple of assassin guys trying to kill her and shit. Or it's like, what if it'll lock onto anything?
Dr. Kynes.
Dr. Kynes.
It's a good name.
The Imperial ecologist and judge of the change. I like that they had a little bit of that Himalayan throat singing when they went to the Salusa Secundus scene, where he's telling the Sardaukar how many he needs, the Mentat, Piter de Vries.
Yeah, they're just like draining people of blood. There's some throat singing going on. It's like, what is this? I mean, is that completely like made up, or is that some description in some book somewhere?
That's just Villeneuve world building around what the Sardaukar are. Because see, Salusa Secundus used to be the home planet of the Emperor.
Yeah,
and then it became a prison planet for all the people that were against him. And then that became the training ground for the Sardaukar, which are like the ultimate fighting force in the universe. And the people that are draining their blood, those are the prisoners that are there, because they just kill them all the time. But they moved the Imperial homeworld to Kaitane because I forget some war or something.
And Andrew, how much of this is just meshing up with Warhammer 40K?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Warhammer 40K, like you have psychers that control warp travel or light speed travel. It's not necessarily just snorting a bunch of space coke and then like seeing space lanes or whatever. That was my one question I had during the whole movie. It was like, how did somebody learn this was a thing? They just had a ship that could go that fast, and they like just did a bunch of drugs they dn't know what it was, and just like, oh yeah, we can get some other places with this. Like, exactly how was that discovered? Because that'd be a really weird fucking discovery.
Well, that technology existed in the time of machines. But you see, everything they like, their technology is still current with what it was at kind of before the Butlerian Jihad. They just had to find a way to stick humans in it. And they found by taking spice, it's like certain people's brains would just develop to do high order mathematics and be able to do all those calculations.
Was that when the guy, like, his eyes roll in the back of his head or whatever, has extra eyelids? That's him doing math or whatever?
Yeah, well, that's him doing high speed calculations. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Mentats do that. The Guild Navigators are something even weirder than Mentats because they're not even really, they're so wildly mutated. They never showed up.
They didn't show up. I remember that from the David Lynch one, where just a big vat of a something.
Looked like an elephant with its legs cut off and no trunk, just floating.
It's very weird. Yeah, that didn't show up. At least not yet.
No. It's not important. I mean, it was just a lot of so much of the Dune movie was just drugged down with the 84 Dune was just drugged down with exposition. I mean, you got to remember, like at the time that movie came out, the only way you would know this stuff is if you read the book closely. So they had to throw so many things in there to like explain kind of what this was. And I mean, this was a movie that came with like a booklet you had to read, or they would hand you like, yeah, read this. It explains the royal houses and the the whole system and all that. Not very many movies you go see nowadays come with homework because everyone has the internet now.
Like
they just look it up before they go.
Well, like the Disney 3-hour recut of the 1984 Dune is basically like a half hour of animation of like explaining like where the planets are and where everything goes, which is also why David Lynch didn't put his name on that one either. It's like, well, that also doesn't include my involvement in the movie. You just added stuff. I mean, you made it more clear, but it doesn't make the movie better.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that movie was fantastic set design, but it also was kind of like it was like the combination of science fiction and an Italian horror movie, and it really didn't really mesh well. There was a lot of gross, weird things going on in that go on in this movie, but they're not like as vividly described or like because I remember in the David Lynch movie, like they had cows sitting upside down that had their eyes cut out, and that was like just hanging out, and there were midgets that were like putting cooking implements in him, and Raban tore a big piece of meat off and was eating it while I was talking to the Baron. A lot of weird stuff thrown in there. It's like, okay, we get it. The Harkonnens are nuts. We understand this. As good as I did not know Javier Bardem was in this until he showed up.
Oh yeah, he's one of the Fremen. Yeah.
It's like, oh wow, okay, they got him. Cool.
This is a wonderful cast. I also like that Villeneuve made everybody read the book before they could join the cast, and so I just think it's fun thinking of like Jason Momoa and Dave Bautista just like in between gym sessions, like reading Dune.
Yeah, I'd like to hear some of those conversations. I guess Jason Momoa loved making this movie though.
Oh, he looked like he had fun.
He was really like into it. He was like, oh, it was such a cool character, and it was amazing to work on the set, and the director was amazing, and he really loved it. You could tell, and he was really into it. And yeah, he had nothing but good stuff to say. This has been approved for the sequel also.
Yeah, that's what I saw. Legendary, approved a second one. Which I don't know, someone's actually putting out the budget. I forget. It's like this movie spent like $25 million less than like some comedy that's coming out, or maybe it's Free Guy or something like that. But like if you're afraid that like they're not going to make another one because they spent too much on this movie, like they didn't, but there's still a fear that they might not make a second one. But yeah, I also thought it was bold, like because I wasn't sure. It's like, is this going to be the whole thing or is this going to be half of it? And as soon as the credits come up, it's like Dune Part 1. It's like, it's bold. It's bold.
He wouldn't make it if they tried to cram it into one, and because he said, you're not going to give me permission to make a 5-hour movie, and nor is anyone gonna do that. So we're going to do this way, or we're just not going to do it. And there was a lot of things he insisted on to make this. Because the last time the Dune word was, evoked in Hollywood, it was a fiasco.
Yeah.
And not necessarily any one person's fault. Like, David Lynch can make a good movie, but just this... And this is the only movie David Lynch made that wasn't based on something he was writing or doing. So that's another challenge. Like, all the other stuff, it was story written by or developed by. He never does anyone else's stuff. So this was one of the few things where... It's like, here's this book, read it.
Well, except when he shoots like Pepsi commercials or whatever.
Well, yeah,
but that's why he does the finances, his individual stuff. So
yeah, people don't like avant-garde movies. Don't command $200 million budgets.
But he also has. You probably wouldn't know it, but he's shot some of the most famous commercials ever, and he shot like, what's that Chris Isaak song? Like, I don't want to. Fall in Love with You or something like that.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Wicked Love. It's one of the most famous music videos of all time, and it was shot by David Lynch. So
yeah, David Lynch and he's done normal movies too. I mean, there's one with a guy,
the lawnmower.
Lawnmower guy.
Something
Not the
story.
Lawnmower Man, but
no. It's like an older man who has to travel the country, and all he has to get across the country is a lawnmower. It's called like a something story. I can't remember, but yeah, it's
poor story. I think it has fucking what's the guy? Oh, fucking hell! I can't even remember his goddamn name now. Robert Duvall in it, I think.
Yeah, I think. or at least that's who I am imagining is in it.
Yeah, the straight story.
Yes, that's it. That's it.
With Richard Farnsworth, Sissy Spacek, Harry Dean Stanton. Those are the three mains.
Yeah, and Sissy Spacek is like, I believe she's like a mentally challenged, his mentally challenged daughter. So
he travels across Iowa and Wisconsin on a lawnmower.
Because isn't like his brother died and he's trying to make it to the funeral or something?
He had a stroke, I think.
Okay.
Because Harry Dean Stanton plays his brother, but
okay.
He just acts like Harry Dean Stanton. Like, yeah, I don't know if that a stroke or not, but it seems like it.
But yeah, but it's kind of this sad and heartwarming story, and I believe it's a true story, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also won praise for having some of the most realistic spoken dialogue of any movie, because it's like, oh, this movie was shot like people were just having real conversations. And that had to do with like the sound design and how it was written. People always praise this movie for like, oh, these are real conversations that people would have, and you're just like you're a listener to it.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's not necessarily conversations that are bringing along plot or anything like that. It's just people talking to each other.
Yeah, very very reminiscent of No Country for Old Men, like those kind of conversations where it's like, yeah, we're just going to talk about things, and it's believable because that's how people talk. I like movies with good dialogue. I don't mind dialogue. See? I don't mind exposition either. Some people really hate it, but I'm like, wow, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, well, as a sci-fi lover, you kind of have to likes exposition.
Yeah.
Because how does this shit work? I don't know, man.
Yeah, I mean, if we were making a movie about me driving a forklift and no one knew what forklifts were, I'd have to have this conversation with someone about how a forklift works, but no one would I would never have that conversation in real life. People would think I was nuts. You know what this magical machine does? Yeah, we've seen them all the time. No, let me explain. It just has the heavy objects high in the air on two columns. Don't tilt too far forward or too far back because you will fall in that direction. We know all this. What are you doing? So just go with me.
Or it's like in movies where it's like you have the rookie cop and the guy who the sergeant or whatever who's training him is telling him things he should have learned in the academy, but for the sake of the audience we're giving the rookie information he should already know, but it's giving information to the audience. It's their proxy.
Don't carry your pistol with the hammer all the way back and no safety on it. Or we'll have a prop shooting and have to stop making our movie, and we can't do that.
Yeah, I heard some weird stuff where it's like, why would you ever have live ammo on a set? And the thing is this would be on independent movies because it would be cheaper. Is so say you have a scene and you just have a guy doing target practice.
Yeah.
Well, it's you just have a range or whatever, and you clear the range, and then you have the guy shoot real bullets because it's more expensive to have him shoot blanks and rig up explosions on the stuff on the other end and have to do multiple shots. And it's well, that's crazy. Just cut the scene out if you're gonna do that.
Yeah.
Why do you have to show him hitting stuff? Just film him with blanks shooting the thing. But whatever.
Yeah, I think this is going to call into question a lot of these straight to Netflix type movies they're shooting now. It's is this really worth this? Because we got to do this cut rate stuff where we bring in the crew walks off twice for safety reasons, then walks off a third time because no one's been paid. That's why they had all these film students and stuff there filling in. And I've heard all kinds of bad things about what was going on that movie. And it's wow, this doesn't sound like, again, so you can make a straight to Netflix Western that no one's going to watch. Yeah.
No. We're in the content era, not the quality era.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Just got to keep cranking it out.
All right. Well, we got 4 minutes, so I'm going to hang up and call you guys back.
All righty.
think I had it, Andrew. Sometimes there's a weird stuff where he'll like want to like call from his phone and not through his computer.
Oh yeah. Yeah, when I had my Android phone, I used to call through the phone. It's like, well, no, I'm not doing my podcast from a phone.
Remember, we are currently live, but we are not on a countdown on account of there's only 2 of us right here.
Yeah, you're seeing production value here.
And right now, I
This is
just
like
had.
when the Night Show had the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson when they had the
Okay.
satellite delay and they'd say obscene things.
Sorry, my computer's just slow. So.
Oh, that's all right.
That's
We didn't
okay.
know if there. Sometimes there's that weird thing where I send you an invite and like it goes to your phone rather than your email.
Well, I mean, it didn't go to my phone this time, but like the email like texted me like 30 seconds after it showed up. So I don't know why it like lags like that. It shouldn't lag like that.
Yeah, stuff happens. So I, yeah, we're back, and I have a haul of Star Wars toys because currently I am collecting or building a stormtrooper army. I guess I don't know to what end. I felt like it was an idea because I'm watching all these toy blogs and they're going to like these cool stores in other cities and like, oh, they have everything and stuff from your childhood. And it's like, I don't want any of that. But I thought this one it's the Black Series Star Wars Stormtroopers. And it's like, I thought it'd be cool to collect just the Stormtroopers because then I don't have to like try to collect everything. But also, unfortunately, the most variety they have of things is Stormtroopers. But also there's a thing like, well, if I get doubles of things, then it's like, that's cool. It just makes the army bigger. And I'm also collecting Mandalorians and just people with helmets, just if the price is good. So like here we got Zora Bliss from the Rise of the Skywalker because she just has a helmet and I got her for like $9. So
I don't even remember that character in the movie, to be honest.
she's the one that was a Bib Fortuna, the little guy. Like she's
Oh, okay.
yeah, she was she's hanging out with them.
That's how much I blocked out those horror movies from my memory. I just don't remember any.
No, the first 2 are good, but Rise of the Skywalker is terrible.
They're all. I mean, I guess the first 2 are watchable, but yeah, they're all horrible. The first one's horrible because it has to rip off the first movie to make it a movie.
Yeah, it's still fun, but like, yeah, it is pretty much just they just recreated the first one, and the second one I really like because it's trying to be different, but it's also awkward because it's trying to be too different.
And that's the one that Star Wars fans hate the most.
Well, they should hate
The only
Rise.
thing I hated about that movie was the hyperdrive kamikaze. When
Yeah.
they introduced that concept. It's like, why aren't they doing this all the time?
Oh, I know.
Get some droid brains in these ships.
Reading a book right now where it's like, basically, if they don't start winning, they're all gonna fucking die, and nobody still has proposed. That's just light speed a ship into the enemy.
Put like R2-D2 in there. And you don't need a big ship. You can use those X-Wings. Just imagine that hitting something at the speed of light. It's like, we won! Dun, 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 dun. But that never happened.
And so here's part of my Mandalorian collection, which I'm also collecting Mandalorians because they're the basis for the Stormtroopers. So we got good old Mando here and the starting armor.
Yep.
Here we
I
got
always
some.
think of his weapon when they come up with these new things, these corporate philosophies, like be a disruptor, and I think yes. Anyway.
We got Jango Fett here.
Yep.
We got Bo-Katan Kryze. She's one of the Mandalorians from the Mandalorian show.
Okay.
That's Katie Sackhoff's character.
Oh. Yeah, it was nice to see her again.
Yeah. And then we got the Armorer.
Oh, I like the armor.
There's like a deluxe set, but I just got this one. It was a really good price.
I want the armorer's tool. It's like I can heat a piece of steel up in like 5 seconds. Like that's amazing.
Here we got the Imperial Shock Trooper from Battlefront.
Okay. I
This-
remember those.
It's one of the video games. This one's kind of interesting. So they have a 40th anniversary of Empire Strikes Back, and so this one is put on like what the original toys looked like when they were put on stores and on the card. So this is an AT-AT driver.
Oh, cool.
So it even has like the Kenner logo here because Hasbro owns Kenner or something.
That's neat.
Yeah.
Man, that movie's 40 years old. That makes me feel old.
Here we have this. So this whole series, the Black Series, started in 2013. They're still going. So they had like the original series was their orange line, and then there's a blue line, and then there's a red line. Here is Luke Skywalker as Stormtrooper from the blue line. And then this is another sequel one. This is one of a Knight of Ren. So this is one of Kylo Ren's like guards or something.
A knight that did absolutely nothing and sounded cool at the same time.
This I don't know what this is from. I think this is from a comic book, but this is from Star Wars Crimson Empire.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a really great comic book, by the way.
It's Connor Jax, which I don't know anything about the character, but it looked cool because I want to
Okay.
have a red section. So this guy's red and he's got a mask on. So
Connor
Alright.
Jax is a previous emperor guard, and he defects to join the rebellion.
okay.
And so he's also, like being hunted and shit like that. And it's really good fucking art. You should read the comics. I should give you that.
All right. Here we got another gaming one. So this is a Flame Trooper from Jedi Fallen Order.
Okay.
I got a lot of flame.
Trooper.
Yeah, I got a lot of
Sounds
Flame
like-
Troopers.
That sounds like a good thing.
Yeah, so he's got kind of like a gas mask thing coming out of his hood there.
In the age of spaceships and laser blasters, flamethrowers are still a great weapon.
That'll get him. Get down in front.
Here's just a Chrome Stormtrooper, a regular ass Stormtrooper.
Chrome.
No, that's cool. It's like Phantasm armor,
Yeah.
but actually like useful. As far as like he actually has more lines than the character has.
And here's just a Darth Vader. Just a Darth Vader. Y'all know what Darth Vader is. Here's another blue line. Here's another blue line, just a TIE pilot.
You should look into those Ashigaru stormtroopers that are $200 a pop.
Here's another orange series. This is a Sand Trooper. So I like that he's got that little like shoulder patch thing. Yeah.
I remember
Eh.
those.
And he's just got like this big backpack thing, and he's got kind of like this Lewis gun thing, the blaster thing.
Yeah, I've always thought stormtroopers were the best thing in Star Wars, but that's just...
Yeah, here we just have a Sith Trooper. So,
I've never seen those.
those are in the sequels.
Oh, okay.
There's a Sith Jump Trooper, or Jet Trooper.
Oh, okay.
So he has a backpack on. You can't see it, but he has a backpack on. So yeah, here we have a Captain Phasma stuff,
All right.
which she looks cool, but in the series she was basically useless and thrown away, literally, even though she was a really cool looking character, and all her stuff is marked down severely.
Yeah, because she's the only character in Star Wars to be thrown away in 2 different movies.
Yeah. Yeah, so like, yeah, I guess I'll get to the market stuff later. And like,
That's
yeah,
why I
this
thought
is,
the Chrome Stormtrooper is cool, because it's like, oh, at
Yeah.
least you had more legions like that.
this is a range trooper. I'm not sure what series this is from, but it's like kind of an in between snow trooper. I think it's kind of like a guy to be in the mountains or something. So maybe that's
okay. Cool looking face shield.
yeah. A lot of stuff. Just a Royal Guard, another red colored thing. Here we got First Order Snowtrooper.
Okay.
I like how they just like when I found out like building some of this stuff is you got all the sequel stuff, they took like the blasters, which is kind of like the World War II submachine guns, and then they just added an AR-15 stock to it and made it kind of a cross between white and black. That's all they did. It's clever.
It works.
Yeah, it's clever. It works. Here you got a First Order Elite Snowtrooper.
Oh, okay.
So they got
Carrying a heater pack with him?
I don't know. Some of them do have a pack, but I mean, this might be on his back. I don't have it opened up yet, so I don't know. And this is another First Order Flame Trooper.
Oh, okay.
Just a different one. Lots of Flame Troopers. Don't know why. But, and this is just a regular First Order Stormtrooper, but they got that weird, like, baton thing.
The anti lightsaber baton.
Yeah. And
Which is probably only the cool idea from the new trilogy.
yeah. Oh, and then here's another just First Order Stormtrooper, but without the baton.
Oh, okay.
And then
Child soldiers.
I mean, they are, but this is like a
Oh,
50.
yeah.
This is a 50-year Lucasfilm one. It's called the Archive series, because the Lucasfilm is 50 years old itself, not necessarily the Star Wars series. And then this is a hover trooper. This is more just a guy that drives the trucks.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Which
so
I-
yeah, from Mando from season 2, where it's like
Yeah, but I think this one is from Rogue One, but I'm not exactly sure. It could, but yeah, because they do have a model coming up, like of those, like when they pretend to be the hover truck guys, and you have the Bill Burr's character, so his figure is coming out, and he's like in that uniform with the mask and everything. So I'll be getting him at some point. So the crazy thing about the whole market on this stuff is like basically everything is sold out at every store. The only thing I was able to buy at a store is at GameStop. And there's exclusives all over the place. GameStop has exclusive. Walmart and Target has exclusives. Walgreens has exclusives. Best Buy has exclusives. And Amazon has exclusives.
Oh, boy.
There's also, like, Hasbro website itself doesn't sell toys, but they do have a thing called Hasbro Pulse, which does sell toys and has exclusives. They even have Kickstarters to build new toys. So if you want to kickstart their Rancor one they're working on, you can.
Get over there. Give them your credit card information.
So I've had to pre-order a bunch of stuff from stores, from like just bigger toy stores, stuff from Amazon. A lot of these are eBay grabs because the market is pretty crazy right now, because I found a website that just like lists the market, like here's the MSRP and what you can get them for. And like, so for like the original trilogy stuff, like you're probably going to go anywhere from like $20 to $35 for a figure. That's like fair. But the only thing you get fucked on, like on shipping. So it's like, oh, I spent fair price for this. So like, oh wait, it's $15 in shipping. I just got fucked here. To ship it from Ohio.
Yeah.
Because there's some weird like scheme going on there. I mean, they're going to give you the thing you bought, but it's also just going to be some weird stuff there. So like the original trilogy stuff is like that. All of the sequel trilogy stuff, man, you can get that stuff for like half off MSRP. Like nobody gives a shit about that stuff.
even Disney that said it's not canon anymore.
Yeah. The stuff that is bizarrely, I guess not, because it'd probably be the kids are grown up now. It's all the prequel stuff. That stuff is hugely expensive. We're talking $60 and up for the things I just showed you, just because it's from the prequels or the Clone Wars TV show. So the only thing I was able to get from the Clone Wars right now is I got Clone Commander Bly.
Okay.
So that little thing up there, like, will come down. It's like a visor to see farther or whatever. And I got Clone Commander Wolf. So those, I was able to get those from regular stores. I didn't have to like pay out the ass for them. But like all the other stuff, it's crazy.
Well, I think people now that they see what Disney wants to produce, they're like, "Oh yeah, the prequels weren't that bad."
Well, there's a great podcast I listened to. It's basically full Verhoeven effect on the Clone Wars. It's called A More Civilized Age, and they go through the whole the cartoon series of the Clone Wars, or the CGI clone or cartoon series, and they just really they kind of go like full Verhoeven effect on it and try to like talk up like what's good about it, and basically how like they turn it to, and it's everything's there they talk about, but these people like are deep like into like literary analysis and stuff like that, so they just like go full bore into a children's cartoon. But it's fun because it's basically about how the prequel trilogy, who like I kind of like seen as like silly, like all I kind of like kind of like I brought the prequel series down to is like it's like George Lucas watched that scene from Clerks that was like into like the intimate details of like did we kill contractors on the Death Star, on the second Death Star and stuff like that, and it seemed like he was overreacting to that. It's like, yeah, who does build the ships and all that stuff, but like really what the prequel stuff is about is like it's anti-war and terrorism rhetoric from George Lucas, and like when they analyze it like that, it's like, oh yeah, that is all there. I just didn't bother to give it that kind of credit because but it seems the Clone War TV show has some merit to it, but it's mostly a children's show. But they do have a new one out called The Bad Batch, which is about like a kind of like an extra special group of clone soldiers that like are mutations, and like they have like they look completely different from the clones. Like they have all their like specialties and weaknesses and stuff like that. And it's and the show's like a lot more adult. Like I think in the second episode, they're basically killing civilians with flamethrowers. It's like, okay, this isn't a children's show anymore. And it takes some use to getting to that CGI animation, but the Bad Batch, it feels like they've had like literally a decade of working on that stuff, and it's pretty well done. And the last episode has some pretty amazing CGI going on. But I do recommend The Bad Batch. It's on Disney Plus.
Oh, okay.
Because what's actually the most interesting thing about the Clone Wars TV series is like what they actually get into the clones and them learning about like being individuals and stuff, and what does that mean, and you're thinking about like, well, in the original Star Wars series, like, are those the clone troopers? And it's no, they're not. They basically got thrown away, and it's like, why? And so they answer that in these series. So that's kind of interesting.
I always knew the Clone Wars was kind of next level, because like all the evil ships were like things from Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations. One of the ships was called the Invisible Hand. That's an Adam Smith concept about economics called the invisible hand of the market will dictate. And it's like, and there was other ships that had names like that. It's like, oh, these guys are just throwing all kinds of crazy shit in here, the writer's room. It's like, well, everyone will just look at that and say, well, that's a sinister name. They won't get the reference. And the people that do, they'll think it's funny. It's like, oh, okay.
Well, also, like, if you want to be reductive, a lot of the stuff on the Clone Wars TV series is them taking, like, hey, let's do that Western, or let's do that Kurosawa movie, but just in the Star Wars universe and for children. Like, if you want to be really reductive, that's kind of all the Clone Wars is. But
yeah,
if you want to give it credit, there is stuff there. But we also have the Bandai models. So luckily, these are 1/12 models, but they're basically the same scales as the Hasbro toys. So here we have an original series Stormtrooper.
Okay.
If it focuses,
DGL 44, I think is what it's called.
Yeah, like the hand is built around the gun. There's a lot of different hands you get. It's just built around the gun, so it's stuck there. The only way you can take it off is to take the hand off. But you get a bunch of different hands. Oh, now his hand fell apart. Oh well. What I do like about these is that for the models, this is a harder plastic. So the other stuff, it's softer plastic, so when the light hits it, it kind of diffuses. But with this, it kind of creates a circle shine on it. So it kind of looks better than the other models when you put a bunch of light on it. So that's neat. Now I gotta find his other hand. Here we have another Bandai model. This is for a First Order Executioner Trooper.
Okay.
This model kit doubles, so you can just make a regular First Order Trooper if you want. You just put white shoulder pads on and it's just a white helmet. It doesn't have this black stripe through it, so that's kind of the only difference.
How many people you're executing all the time? Because that was never in the movies. Plus, there's comic books and stuff to go with it too, probably. But at the same time, it's like, that's weird.
And then I have this. This is probably the coolest thing. This is from Bandai. I thought this was a model, it was not. But this is like a sub Bandai thing from Tamashii Nations. This is Ashigaru Toshi Captain Phasma. So, and this one.
Oh, okay.
So this is
They
Captain.
gave it a samurai effect.
Yeah, so like the stormtroopers are based on the samurais, and so and probably German stormtroopers, and they kind of reversed it and made them back into samurais. So yeah, this is a sword. It comes out. There's a cool gun that comes with it, where it looks like a blaster, but it's like a cap and ball gun.
Yep, and that's why I like the Japanese ones a lot. If I would have bought the original ones back when I bought them, they would be worth $2,000 now instead of $100 I paid for them.
So yeah,
I did not.
but these are fucking expensive. So like I said, the Captain Phasma stuff is all devalued. I got this for $70, and all the other ones are between $130 and $300.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is probably the only one of this I'm getting. And it looks cool, so.
Yeah, that is a cool idea.
So yeah, that is, and I got more coming in, so.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. There's an artillery stormtrooper. Oh, I forgot one of these. Yeah. This is from one of the Mandalorian ones. Here's my prototype Boba Fett.
Oh, okay.
And so this will look nicely because then you stand them all up. This will be the blend between the stormtroopers and the Mandalorians. Because it basically just looks like a Boba Fett as a stormtrooper.
All
Yes.
right.
So that's my haul of toys.
Toy time. So we watched a movie this week.
Yes.
We watched the 1983 Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, which is a Japanese-British co-production war film directed by Nagisa Oshima and written by Oshima and Paul Meyersburg. And it's essentially, have you ever seen Bridge Over the River Kwai? Remember
Yes.
that one? Okay, so I see this as it's a straightforward story about British POWs off, I think it was an island of,
It was Burma.
Indonesia.
yeah, it was,
It's
Java.
in Java, Indonesia, yes.
yeah. And so it starts off kind of like that. The
Bridge over the River Kwai is in Burma. So
Okay.
Oh,
that's
okay.
fair.
So it kind of starts off like the title character, Mr. Lawrence, as a British POW, happens to speak Japanese, and knows something of their culture and history. That's played by Tom Conti, he's been in a lot of stuff.
yeah, he's still around. So
And there's I guess the guy who played Sergeant Hara was a comedian in Japan at that time.
Yeah,
This was
yeah.
his first serious role.
So that's Takeshi, who also, if you IMDb says Takeshi Kitano, he's also known as Beat Takeshi.
Okay.
Yeah, when I saw him, I was like, fuck, I know that guy. Where the fuck's he from? And then, like, I thought maybe I was confusing him for a different Asian person. I was like, and I looked up his movie database, and, like, usually they give, like, the first 4 films that, like, this is the most films you'd know him from. And there was none of them I was expecting. And I was like, ah. And I just, like, went back to it. It's like, no, he's got to be in Battle Royale. And I looked up Battle Royale. Yes, he's in Battle Royale. He's also in Ghost in the Shell as, like, the chief in the live action one. But he's in a lot of stuff. Yeah, I heard a kind of a horror story he told about, like, this is one of he was a comedian at the time. This is kind of his first dramatic role, and I guess he snuck into like a Japanese audience watching it, and he was horrified to find that every time he was on screen, people just laughed at him. So
Yeah.
but he's really good in this movie. Anyways,
And the guy who plays the guy in charge of the POW camp, Captain Yoni, is in real life like a psychedelic musician guy.
yeah, he did the soundtrack for this
He
movie.
did the soundtrack, and of course David Bowie. You can't forget him.
Yeah, which has I don't know if that's like how just David Bowie's eyes look, but they're fucking weird because they have different pupil sizes.
Yeah, that he was fighting some guy over a girl, I guess, in what their equivalent of high school is, and his eye got scratched, and the thing that makes your pupil open and close doesn't work in that eye for him.
Okay.
So he's got one blue eye and one eye that looks like kind of black green because his pupil never closes, and he's been that way since he was a teenager. So yeah, that's a real thing because he does that a lot, and there was a lot of videos and stuff, and because he kind of he's always been popular, but he kind of had a renaissance in like the late '90s, and people are like, "Oh, what's that weird thing he's doing with his eye? Is he wearing contacts?" It's like, no, that's how his eye is. I remember hearing that story, and it's very very odd to see.
Yeah. So
Especially when he's doing like long dialogue, serious acting role. And most of the time, he's staring at the camera like this, and it's like, oh, his eye's weird. And unfortunately, he died in 2016.
Yep.
But this was a movie that, like, it seemed like a straightforward movie, but with a weird soundtrack and a lot of weird subtext with men that were either were they sexually attracted to each other, or were they just hypnotized by each other, especially like David Bowie and Captain Yanni. Like, I never understood what that was supposed to mean.
Oh, because there's that
watching it is like, oh, this guy is just kind of, he's so strange. He's like he's gotten to the mind of Captain Yoni and he's messing with him.
Well, that's the thing. Like in the beginning, you think that like Sergeant Hara is like the bad guy, and then the Captain Yoni is the one who's like upholding like strict laws.
The Bushido Code, yeah.
Yeah, and then it just switches by the end of the movie. But then there's that thing in the opening where they're beating up those guys because one guy stole bananas and the other guy was. They're saying he either raped him or they were like. Or it was consensual, but either way, they're basically going to execute them for homosexual acts anyways. It didn't matter what was true or not.
Yeah.
And the guy stabs himself in the stomach and then later finishes the job. It's like, that's exceptionally weird.
And they patched him up even so he could stab himself in the stomach again.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, what's that called? Seppuku?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's basically you stab yourself through the stomach and move the knife to the right because it's an unhealable wound, and then somebody chops your head off with a samurai sword. It's like we could have just chopped his head off with a sword and saved the stabbing, but I guess that's a kind of a thing.
Well, it's also something that Sergeant Hara like takes up where it's like if he like kills himself, but then they chop his head off, it's like then they can consider it an accident or something, and like money will go to his family.
Oh, okay.
I forget how that worked, but that was like it was a weird thing where Sergeant Hara is also just like, belittling and beating these people, but also like on the back end, it's like, well, it'll help your family. There's also something like the prisoners are starving, but it also seems like the soldiers are also starving.
Yeah, well, the war is not going well at this time. They're starting to be driven out because this is set in 42.
Yeah.
And they're starting to be driven out of Burma and Indochina and those places. So they're not yet behind enemy lines, but the supply chains are getting stretched. So, but yeah, this is like I said, it's a straightforward story with weird subtext and an unusual like electro soundtrack.
Yeah, it's like some stuff. Sometimes there's synthesizers, sometimes there's like an actual like orchestra and stuff like that. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's very subtle though. It's not like loud.
No,
but it's a good, and David Bowie does a great job in this as being kind of this enigmatic figure he's like he's one of those leaders that doesn't want to be a leader, but people just follow him because it's like, well, this guy's doing something rebellious and
there's that fucked up thing where they fake execute him in the beginning of the movie.
Yeah,
it's like, what was that for?
Just trying to break him down.
Yeah, because also he seems to be like hallucinating throughout half the movie.
Yeah, he's a broken guy. And then we have this flashback to like when they're in primary school, I guess they call it, and his younger brother who has a beautiful singing voice. And I guess that there's like some initiation at this school they're going to, or they just want to beat or what do they call that? Jump in his brother.
Yeah.
It's like an initiation, but it's not one that anyone wants because it's just cruel. It's just a bunch of bullies.
Yeah.
basically bullying his brother in front of the whole school, and he doesn't say anything to stop, because I guess he has some clout there. And he's like, "What about your brother? Do you think we can?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, he's fine. Yeah, go ahead and do it." He won't stand up to these guys, but not because he's afraid of them, just because he's just indifferent to his brother. And his little brother has this amazing singing voice, I guess. And then after they bully him at the school, he never sings again. And but it's kind of weird because all the kids at the school are like young kids, and it's David Bowie. It's sort of a weird like shooting, because initially they have him as a younger man and his younger brother, and he took the beating for his brother, like in the first scene, but that was not David Bowie. That was a younger actor.
Yeah.
And then later at the school, it's just David Bowie walking around the school with all these different aged kids. But yeah.
Well, I like that. I believe the trivia said that this is a Japanese director, and like I guess all the Japanese actors got like very specific directions, and then the English actors was like, just do the thing you do.
Yeah, and a little bit of the background of this, I looked it up, and the director of this, Oshima, I was just going to say his last name because his first name's like Nagisa or something. I don't do good with Japanese names. Like, he was kind of a controversial, like, new wave director in Japan, and he made some films that were, considered kind of controversial over there, and he was kind of a lot of art house type stuff.
Yeah.
So this was an interesting way of directing a movie like this, where it's a pretty straightforward story. It's based on a book written by a guy's experience in Japanese POW camp. It was written by a Dutch guy, and so like a lot of the names and stuff are from the book, and the story kind of follows that line, but it doesn't have this extra layer of weirdness they put over this.
There's also this whole thing between like, it's like there's this disconnect between, a cultural disconnect between these mostly British soldiers, but it's also like there's Dutch people there and Korean soldiers, but there's this cultural disconnect where like it's like, oh, we need to starve the people. It's like, you can't do that. That's against, like, that's a war crime or whatever. But it's like, no, you don't get it. Like, he's also not going to eat. Like, he thinks we're spiritually cleansing everything. He thinks that's what the problem is. It's like, there's evil spirits here.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't get it. And it's good that it's shot that way, because I mean, these guys don't understand each other. Most of them don't even speak the same language in real life.
Yeah.
So, so it's like I said, it's a straightforward film with a lot of like contextual subtexts and and weird music that set it apart. Doesn't look like a movie that was shot in the 80s though. It looks more like a 70s movie.
Yeah.
It's also shot in New Zealand.
Huh.
So it has that kind of interesting background.
There's that weird scene where like he's in jail, which I like the jails though. They're just like, it's just tree trunks with cement in between. Yep. And then some barbed wire and a door.
Nope. Nowhere to go.
Or there's the solitary confinement room, which has like a big door on it, and then I guess to hurt the soul or whoever's in there is like, there's nothing to sleep on but rocks. But yeah. the captain gives what's his character's name? David Bowie by Collier. He gives him a blanket to sleep on top of the rocks. But then a guy comes in to assassinate him, and he stabs the guard on the way in. Then that guy's foiled by Collier, and then there's the weird scene where the captain and Collier are like having like a sword fight, but then Collier just like stabs the sword in the ground and like basically goes up to stand in front of him. It's like, oh, I'm right here. Because
those weird scenes where Yoni like watches him sleep. Yeah. And he just straight up asks him once, like, "Are you a demon?" Like, yeah, he seems like he just can't figure this guy out.
And then you have like the leader of the prisoner group, who's kind of like, almost seems Australian, but he's not. He's just a British commander, and there's like a weird tension between them and Lawrence. Because like they keep thinking like they're gonna kill him and replace him with Lawrence. It's like, no, I'm just the only one that can speak Japanese, dude.
Yeah. Actually, that guy is Australian, that actor.
Oh, he is? Okay.
His name's Jack Thompson. But he sounds like the old school British guy. Well, blimey, bloody, what the hell? Because how they don't talk anymore, but they did in all movies from that era. Or maybe they do talk like that. I don't know. Don't hear it as much. John Oliver doesn't talk like that, so he's my English guy reference.
No, I listened to a wrestling podcast from guys from Newcastle. And I found that the Newcastle accent is very American.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like they're pretty understandable, and it's kind of slowed down, I guess, in a way. But obviously British, but like it's fun when they do American accents. It's like, oh, that's not bad, because they're not going that far to get their accent.
Yeah, it's not like some bizarre like Geordie accent from the north of England, like Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, where even the guys from London are like, what is that? Newcastle upon Tyne. That's also in the north of England, but they must say it like north and not north. But anyway,
and then Andrew, you chose this movie and didn't like it.
Well, I just chose it basically not really anything besides to go off besides the cast and the name of the movie and the reputation. I mean, I just didn't care for it because it's not my type of movie. I don't like things that like basically jump around and don't really explain themselves, like the really weird relationship between all the prisoners and fucking the camp coordinator and shit. Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's like, is that really how POW camps work? Like, I know that they have to have some communication with the prisoners and shit because they're technically abiding by the Geneva Convention or trying to. I guess.
Not the Japanese, because they.
Well, no, I'm just saying it's like in most prisoner war camps in like World War II in Europe and shit like that. That was the norm, I would think.
Well, I mean, they even point out in the movie that's like. It's like this isn't Germany, and that's why they're not adhering to the Geneva Convention or whatever. But also, neither did the Germans adhere to the Geneva Convention. So
neither did we.
Yeah.
Which is
although if you go through history, it seems like the stories, like, or at least or maybe it's even rumors, but it's like. Is if you're going to surrender to the Americans, not to the Russians.
Oh no, that was true. Yeah, they even told especially the girls in Germany, they said, go towards the Union Jack, or better yet, go towards the Stars and Stripes, because don't go to the Russians, because they'll just rape you to death. And they did. But yeah, that was. I think a lot of the American stuff, like World War II, especially that era of crimes, especially after the defeat of Japan, a lot of that was retaliation for how they treated our POWs, and also people kind of forget like the comprehensive bombing campaign that Japan was dealt by us before the atom bombs. They killed 700,000 people when they firebombed some of those cities. So it was like, we didn't do things to all their soldiers necessarily this horrible. We just killed millions of people with like napalm bombs dropped on wooden cities because we knew that's what would happen. So it was always like, we didn't commit actual war crimes against prisoners very often, but we also bombed civilians to, incinerated 400,000 people literally. So yeah, there's kind of a different view on they took their little shots when they could, but we dropped nuclear bombs on them. So it was sort of like, well, all's fair in love and war. So you didn't really care for this one, Andrew? Just too disjointed a story?
Well, it was just too disjointed. Like, after watching Bridge over the River Kwai in high school, like, that was a really good movie. Don't remember, like, all of it, but enough of it to know that's, like, the superior movie to this movie. Like, I know they're going for something different here, and it's not... Yeah,
do you have a built-in expectation that this is a prisoner of war movie, and that they should be, like, looking to escape? That's not really the plot of this movie.
No, not so much escape, but, like, it just seems so weird that they kept going to Lawrence for everything. Like, Lawrence, come here, look at this, come on, Lawrence. And it's like, what are you guys best friends with the fucking captors? Like, it doesn't make it... Because, like, they'll beat you in 5 seconds, but then they want you to look at everything.
Yeah, well, yeah.
That didn't make any sense.
Mr. Lawrence and Sergeant Hara have, like, a weird, like buddy-buddy relationship, even though Hara, like, severely beats him on several times. But also, because there's this time they find a radio in the camp, and somebody needs to be punished, and so basically they don't care who gets punished, just that somebody gets punished. And this was like punishable by death. And this is where sort of where the title comes from, is that Sergeant Harr figures out who did bring it in, and this is when Lawrence and Collier are about to be executed, and they bring him into Sergeant Harr, who's drunk. He's like, Merry Christmas, like, you're not going to die.
I am Father Christmas.
Yeah.
He's drunk. He's completely wasted. Sergeant Harr is completely blasted.
Yeah.
He's like, I am the new Father Christmas now. Merry Christmas. So it's kind of an ironic title, because it's like, well, it's good he's not dying, but he had to deal with the horror of an anticipated death, and this guy's like dismissive, like, good, go. And he did that without the captain's permission.
Yeah.
He was punished for that because he wanted to see someone die for that radio, and Sergeant Harr decided on his own to dismiss him, and the captain wouldn't reverse that decision because it would, he didn't want, I forget how he explained it, but he's like, I can't be seen to go against him. But he wasn't happy with him.
But then like the film title comes at the end, because here it's kind of building it, but at the end it's like 4 years after, where Collier is like buried up in sand to his neck and just left there to die, presumably of starvation or just sun or whatever. Yeah. And Captain Yanoi takes like some of his hair, and a really weird scene. White moth lands on his head, and so when it fades out, the last thing you see is just the bright white moth. But then it comes back 4 years later, and Sergeant Hara is about to be executed. Essentially, because he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and somebody needs to be punished for the Japanese crimes, and he's there. And so he's about to be executed, and he called for Colonel Lawrence, and he shows up basically to kind of send him off before he dies, and that's where you get the last scene is the close up of Takeshi saying "Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence," but
in kind of a sad, almost angry way.
Yeah, but he has a big smile on his face, and it's just kind of weird.
He has a big smile on his face because he's going to be put to death.
Yeah,
he's like, "Yeah, Merry Christmas. I gave you your life, but you can't give me mine." Because Lawrence says, if I could have it my way, you wouldn't be executed. But I don't, I have no control over that anymore. So. And we find out Captain Conti was also, or Captain
Lawrence,
or the Japanese captain that got relieved.
Oh, yeah, he died.
He was executed earlier.
Yeah.
Or died. I don't know. Did they? I think he was executed.
Yeah, I mean, they say he died, but I mean, it's presumed that he became a better person after he kills Collier.
That makes sense.
He doesn't kill. He doesn't order that to be done to Collier. That's the guy who comes in after the captain has a breakdown when Collier walks up to him and kisses him on both cheeks like a Frenchman.
Yeah,
and he's waving a sword at him, and then he just has looks like he's going to hit him with the sword, and he just breaks down because he can't deal with this white demon or whatever he calls him. I think he calls him a white demon at one point. But, but the guy who took over after Captain Yoni, he's the one who's like, just bury him and let him die of exposure. So he didn't do anything to stop it either. He came and took a lock of his hair because he wanted that sent to a shrine.
Yeah.
Somewhere, so in paper, so it would be banished or something. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah.
Like I said, a very straightforward movie in its actual story, just with bizarre elements.
Yeah, it's just cultural conflicts and stuff like that. That's kind of like the crux of the movie.
Yeah. I did enjoy watching it, but I expected something weird. Because like, this is a David Bowie movie with a French
there's a reason you never really there's a reason you've never heard of this movie before. So
yeah, this is an apocalypse now as far as a war epic goes. It's just an odd little tale.
Yeah, there's nothing like fun in this movie.
No. It's not the fun prisoner of war camp. It's not the Hogan's Heroes. The plucky aviators trying to trick the stupid Nazis, and it's like, that's a funny idea, but there's a whole subtext to that war that's awful.
Christopher Nolan's Hogan's Heroes. We just extract all the comedy out of Hogan's Heroes. It's nothing but
make Hogan's Heroes, but it's like dark, and at the end the camp gets liberated by the Russians. You know what that means? It's like, goodbye, Corporal Klink. goodbye, and then the Russians just shoot. It has that comedic element to it. It's like, oh, do you want to be guests of Stalin? No, we'll go back to our lines. Okay. The Russians are all weirdly ironic and philosophical about murdering the Germans, which they totally weren't. They just hated the Germans. They had good reasons to.
Yeah. Which is probably why the Americans were a bit more softer on prisoners of war, because we didn't have years of hatred and millions of bodies behind that.
Well, you got to remember at that time in America too. I don't know what it's like now, but like, what is it? 60% of the people, of the white people in this country, have German ancestry, and a lot of people spoke German in America at that time or were familiar with it. So it was almost like killing people that looked and acted like you in some ways. That was weird for us. Like Japan was just like a flamethrower and swords brawl. It's like, we don't like these guys and they don't like us, and we don't have anything in common with them.
Well, it's there's some like amateur historians will suggest that like the only reason we sided with the British in World War II is because they spoke English.
No, it's okay. I mean, we understood the British culturally and better. We're not like that far apart from them, but
I mean, it's mostly that's used as an example. It's like sometimes, things there isn't like a complicated reason for everything historically. Like sometimes it's like, oh no, people have sometimes people are more familiar with people and that's why they side with them. So it's more of
the
a
British were fascists. Would be I don't know, man. There was a lot of people
it's more of a thought experiment than like, this is the reason why. It's more like, well, here's one reason. There's more better reasons, but this is also one. So
yeah, I mean, a lot of people liked Hitler in America before World War II too. They didn't really understand Hitler, but they're like, well, he's going to get the commies out of Europe, and that's good for business, and that's good for America, and all the same bullshit people talk about now. But there's people in America that think Putin's like, he's a strong man. He's standing up for Russian morals. It's like, oh, you don't know anything about that country, obviously. If you think that's your guy.
Putin and Trump are going to fix the world.
Yeah, oh yeah. Two guys with great ideas.
Wait, Trump has ideas?
Oh, he had ideas. These weren't good ones. Really,
so I thought Trump even stole his bad ideas. It was just popular nonsense that he went with. He's more of an actor than a writer.
Yeah, he'd say anything as long as the crowd clapped. Feed my emptiness. Validate me. Dad was mean to me. My mom was very, very distant and cold. And my brother drank himself to death at like 35. Like, that's some serious drinking.
That's like the only lesson he learned, is that he's not a drinker because his brother died. That's the only lesson he seemed to learn his entire life.
You know why his brother drank himself to death, though, yeah?
No.
He wanted to be a pilot for Pan Am. That's all he wanted to do. He didn't want to be in real estate. He didn't want to do anything. His dad was just so ruthless to him. He's like, I'm going to cut you off. You're a failure. You're a loser. And back at that time, being a pilot was like, that's like being a doctor. It was like big money, and not Trump money, but it was like a respectable job. And he's like, no, you got to do what I want, or you're a piece of shit. And his brother just couldn't deal with it. So he just started hitting the bottle at 12. Yeah, it's there's a reason that guy's that way. That takes some social engineering to make you that maniacal. No one's born that way. Early life experiences will inform that type of behavior. All right. Well, that's all I got for this week.
Oh, should I do a F1 update?
Yeah. We had an F1. I thought
we talked about qualifying. We had the USGP in Austin, Texas. It was a good race, but it was the really obvious thing. It had an amazing first lap where Verstappen was on pole. Lewis Hamilton takes the lead. It's very exciting. And then you have like this crazy shootout between the McLarens and the Ferraris where they're like going like 4 wide or whatever. And then after that, the race kind of just became a strategy race. So it's only interesting if you know what's happening, or it's like, oh, Verstappen's going for the undercut, and so if you don't know what's going on, it's like, what does that mean? He pits first and he comes out later, and they never fight on track. And it's like, that's a strategy race, so you have to be happy with that. Because even though like the Austin track is like, it's very wide, but apparently because it was so hot there, it was 30 degrees, Nathan, which converts to 96 degrees Fahrenheit. And so it was very hot. So this was a 2-stop race because there's no way the tires were going to last. So like the tires were falling apart because of the heat, and I guess because of the softer compounds they're using. There's a lot of stuff with track limits this race, and just because like I guess the track is kind of beat up a little bit, so it was just tearing the tires apart. And so it just became, so it was hard to pass people, even though there's like room to do so with these cars, but there wasn't a lot of passing in this race. Alonso was getting into it with both Rameros, where they're knocking both each other off the track, so that was fun. And then it looks like F1 has finally made it big in America, because over the weekend, throughout the 3 days, it was attended by over 400,000 people.
Yeah, I saw it was like wall to wall when I.
Yeah. And so and they compared it to 2018 and not 2019. I'm not sure why, because they were there in 2019. But in 2018, there was like 280,000 people over the weekend. So this was 400,000. But also 400,000 people makes it the biggest F1 event ever.
Oh, okay.
In America. Who'd have thought? So there's going to be 2 races in America next year, and possibly 3.
Oh, okay.
They're looking to put one in Vegas, and also Indianapolis 500 is right there, and it's FIA rated, so they can race there if they want. Now, they wouldn't race the big oval, but there's a street track that they make out of the big oval.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Where it cuts into the infield and has a bunch of twists and turns and stuff. So yeah, it looks like there's probably going to be more races in America. So,
well, that's good. Maybe you get to see one.
Yeah, and the cars are going to be new next year, so that'll be fun.
Do they have an F1 track in Iowa?
No.
They should have one.
There's an IndyCar track there's like an oval for NASCARs that we have. It got built pretty recently. Yeah, because there's gonna be 2 IndyCars races here next year, so that'll be fun. But nothing here, I believe, is FIA rated.
Oh, okay.
Because that's all about safety concerns and stuff like that, and so very few tracks are. But they're building that track in Miami right now, and it'll be ready for next year. And then, like I said, the Indianapolis 500 is FIA rated, but the last time they were there was a whole debacle, because everybody started the race, but then like pretty much every team pulled into the pit box and retired from the race because the tires. This is when they had 2 different tire manufacturers, and I can't remember. It might have been the Michelin ones or the Bridgestone. I can't remember which. One of them were basically, if you got a few laps in the race, the tires were going to explode in the corners.
Yeah.
And so all the people that had those tires retired from the race, and then it was a huge debacle. Like, the fans were pissed, and it was one of the biggest farces in America or in motorsports racing history. And one of the reasons why Americans don't like F1 for a long time. But
it's also because of how the grooves they cut in the tracks at the Indianapolis 500. It's for anti-water retention. And I guess whatever compound and tires the IndyCar uses, like, they're not as drastically affected by that. But before the Formula One teams went there, they're like, we don't want to race on that surface. I'm like, we're not going to resurface the track for it. It's 6 months notice or whatever. And so a lot of people went in. But I mean, they did finish the race, but it was a bunch of like their bottom rung drivers. Like,
well, it was like 4 people racing each other.
Yeah. None of their serious teams wanted to blow their cars to pieces.
Well, I think it was actually Ferrari were the ones that had the different tires that were, we'll race it. But it was a big farce.
But slowly they've gone away from that. They do a different anti-water treatment now, so they don't cut what they call diamond grooving. They don't do that anymore at American racetracks.
Well, also, like, the tire manufacturers, it's neither of those now. It's Pirelli does the tires for F1. So,
well,
but also
it's got bought up and consolidated. So.
Yeah. But also, like, all that stuff's... Well, also, they just have one manufacturer now. But
Yeah.
they're also, like, intentionally make the tires, like, degrade to make the races more interesting.
Yeah.
But then the teams just find a way to, like, magically not make the tire degrade. So they have to keep making shittier tires till one day, the tire's too shitty. It's like, you told us to make shitty tires.
Yeah, they just peel it out of a gum wrapper. It's like, it's a tire. You can take a corner at 160 miles an hour once, but then the tires unspool. It's like a gecko grip tire. You can drive up walls.
Anyways, yeah, so that's F1 update. So we got Mexico next week.
All right.
But it's Max Verstappen won. He takes the lead in the championship, and it looks, from what people say, it looks like Red Bull are favored in the rest of the track. So it's probably going to be a Red Bull win, but we'll see.
All right. Well,
Or Max Verstappen as the champion.
we will stay tuned and find out. How many years has Hamilton been the champion?
The 3 years, and then his teammate, and then another 3 years. So
Okay.
So for 3 years.
So it's been a Mercedes thing for
7 years. They've
7
won it 7 years in a row.
Okay.
It's unprecedented.
New cars next year, so we don't know what's going to happen. But yeah, Mexico GP, check it out. All right. Well,
And it'll be on at a good time.
yeah, we got a decent time.
You won't have to watch it at 7 or 4 in the morning. It'll be on around, because this one was on at like 2 o'clock. So
Yeah.
it'll probably be around the same time. Anyways, yeah.
All right. Well, this week for the American Greed Factory podcast, this is Nathan.
This is Colin.
Hey.
Goodbye, America.